Imagine homegrown raspberries, perfectly ripe, sweet, juicy, in your yard every year. Today, I'm going to show you how I planted a new row of Bareroot thornless raspberry bushes in my front yard garden and talk about the best soil, the best time and place to plant, how to plant the canes, spacing, amendments, depth, watering, drainage, fertilizer, pH, and more. Hi guys, I'm April from Resprout. Like and subscribe for more garden tips and tutorials for my suburban front yard garden where I help you garden like a boss. Raspberries are fruiting brambles, not trees, despite reaching a height of up to 9 feet. They're part of the plant genus Rubus. They come in a variety of colors like black, white, red, purple, and yellow, but the most popular and recognizable are the red raspberries, Rubus idaeus. Raspberries can bear fruit for up to 20 years since they have a perennial root system and crown. But the canes themselves are biennial, meaning they live for 2 years each, with each cane bearing fruit on the second year. First year canes are called primocanes. Think primo for one. And second year canes are called floricanes because the canes set flower. Think flora for flower. The raspberries I'll be planting are Encore Red Raspberry and Crimson Night, both red thornless raspberries from my favorite nursery, Stark Brothers. Some other popular varieties include Heritage, Anne, Joan, Jewel, and Fall Gold. If you have a favorite variety you love, let us all know about it and your climate in the comments. I chose these because they're thornless because I don't like to bleed while I'm gardening, but hey, that's just a personal preference. I also picked them because they're self-pollinating because I have a small garden and because the two varieties produce at different times of the year. So I'll be able to extend my harvest over a longer portion of the year. One is a summer-bearing raspberry and the other is a fall-bearing raspberry, also called everbearing because it bears in both the summer and fall. Most raspberries are self-pollinating, meaning they don't need another variety to bear fruit. If you have the room though, try to do more than one variety since cross-pollination increases fruit yields. I'm going to be adding my row of raspberries next to my 2 rows of blackberries in my front yard trellis area. This new row is part of one of my goals for this year's garden plan, to grow more fruit and use my space better. Like most things in the vegetable garden, raspberry plants thrive best in full sun, meaning 6 to 8 hours per day. That being said, they tolerate a placement in part shade a bit better than other fruiting plants like tomatoes or strawberries. They'll just produce less fruit. Sun scald or sunburn is a condition that can afflict raspberries when the sunlight is too bright, too long, or too sudden. It more commonly happens in the summer and makes the berries turn white and lose their flavor. Don't let this deter you from planting in the full sun though, because there are ways to deal with this if it happens to your plants at all. In North America, raspberries are not technically considered invasive since they're native and don't generally cause damage. They do send out very vigorous suckers at the ground, up to several feet away though. You'll want to either prune any outside the bed or regularly dig around the perimeter. Because my beds are surrounded by grass, any errant suckers are taken care of by my lawnmower. The best time to plant raspberries is the early spring when the soil is workable and the ground has thawed. If your canes are dormant, meaning there's no new leaves or new growth, you can plant before your last frost in late winter since the plant won't be affected. You can plant in the fall or at any other times of the year too, but if your plant has leafed out, you'll need to protect it from a hard frost. Fall planted raspberries should be slowly acclimated to colder weather so that they go back into dormancy after you plant them. No matter what time of the year you plant, if the temperatures are below freezing during planting, avoid exposing the plant's roots to air and get them into the ground as quickly as possible. I'm creating a new bed in my trellis area, so the first thing I had to do was mark out the area. If you're doing a row of raspberries, ideally the row should be 12 to 18 inches wide, no wider than 2.5 feet. For my bed, I went with the larger width. Within the rows, each plant should be spaced 2 to 8 feet apart depending on the variety. My rows are 13 feet long, so I planned for 4 plants since the Encore variety required 3 to 4 foot spacing. The average raspberry plant yields 1 to 2 quarts of fruit per year. Stark Brothers, the nursery I bought my plants from, recommends planting 4 to 5 plants per person in your family. Raspberries are prone to root rot and need well-draining soil. So once I got the area marked out, I tilled the soil up using my broad fork, one of the most underrated ways to create a new bed and also to have a heart attack.
Oh my God, I think I'm gonna die. There is seriously a root under there that is the size of a person. I used to have a really big tree on this corner and I just found out that all the roots are still under the ground.
I was able to leverage the broad fork to get the rocks and a lot of roots out, but some of them I had to attack with a pruning saw and loppers.
This is just some of the stuff that I pulled out.
After that, I pulled out all the big clumps of grass and weeds so they wouldn't take over the bed after I planted the raspberries.
You want this soil to be nice and loose.
If you have seriously compacted soil, just a simple tilling might not do it. Consider planting in raised beds, planting a cover crop if you have time, or amending with organic matter like compost. Raspberries like rich soil, so regardless of whether or not you need to improve the drainage, compost makes a great amendment because it's one of the best ways to increase fertility too. Apply it at a rate of 3.5 cubic feet per 100 square feet. My bed was 39 square feet, so I needed to apply a little over 1 cubic foot. My compost bins were running low. I never seem to have enough of this stuff. So I ended up using purchased compost that I get from a local horse farm, made of horse manure, hay, wood shavings, and yard waste. If you're planting in summer or fall, don't fertilize raspberry plants because it will force new growth that will end up getting damaged by a hard frost. If you're planting in the late winter or spring, like me, fertilize the raspberry bed with a 10-10-10 fertilizer at a rate of 25 pounds per 1,000 square feet. That meant my 39 square foot bed needed a little under 1 pound of 10-10-10 fertilizer. Raspberries like acidic soil, a level of 5.6 to 6.2. If you're not sure what your soil pH is, you can pick up a fairly inexpensive pH testing kit online. I needed to acidify my soil, but I also needed to add fertilizer, so I used a 436 acid fertilizer, which I also used for my blueberries and blackberries. Because it had about half the value of a 10-10-10, I used 2 pounds instead of 1 pound of fertilizer. After that, I incorporated the compost and fertilizer into the soil with my garden fork and then leveled off the bed with a rake. Like strawberries, most raspberry plants are sold bare root, meaning they come dormant without soil, usually wrapped in just plastic, some shredded paper, and a rubber band. If you've never seen these pathetic things before, you are going to be totally unimpressed and you are going to want to call the company and complain about how dead your plants are. As usual, I was running late with my planting, so I threw the canes into a pot with some potting mix, watered them, put them outside to wait, and they grew beautifully while I prepped the bed. If you're planting Bareroot plants, soak the roots in water for 1 to 2 hours before planting, no longer than 6 hours. You can plant Bareroot canes at any time of the year. If you're transplanting potted raspberry plants, like I technically was at this point, you don't have to soak the roots. Make sure to plant so that the crown is above the soil line. You should see a soil line mark on the cane where it was planted before. Tamp down the soil and water well to settle the soil and collapse any air pockets. You can hand water or set up irrigation like I did. I used the snip and drip system from Garden Supply. It took me about a half hour to customize an extension to the existing irrigation lines already in my trellis area. If you guys are interested in learning more about how I set up this system, let me know in the comments. To retain moisture, keep down weeds, and prevent frost damage, it's a good idea to mulch. If, however, you have drainage or rodent issues, skip the mulch. Mulch can make both of these problems worse. If you do apply mulch, don't apply it too thickly as it may inhibit the raspberry suckers from sprouting in your bed. These suckers will be the source of your fruit next year, so you don't want to smother these. Unless you have a creeping raspberry, you'll need some type of support for your raspberries. Trellises keep the raspberries upright and contained, make it easier to harvest, improve airflow, reduce disease, and improve fruit quality. You don't have to build the trellis before or even immediately after planting, but you'll need to do it within 1 year of the planting. The most popular types of trellises for red raspberries are V trellises and T trellises, with trellis wires 3.5 feet apart on both types to accommodate the width of the raspberry plant. I plan on building a T trellis like my blackberry trellises that match the rest of my vegetable trellises. There is so much that goes into caring for raspberries once they're planted. Pruning, fertilizing, disease and pest management, harvesting, irrigation. Now that you got your raspberries in the ground, let me know if you want me to do a separate video on caring for raspberries. And let us all know your tips on planting and getting the biggest harvests. I hope this video helped you out. Remember to sign up for my email newsletter for more garden resources. And keep gardening like a boss, and I'll see you guys soon.